hey, welcome back, Adrenaline Volleyball subscribers on Patreon. And a little bit late, we weren't quite sure what exactly was the midpoint of this crazy season, but we are here to talk about and break down our mid-season Player of the Year finalists for Adrenaline Volleyball. And we have some pretty talented athletes in each class. And so Haley and I are going to talk about each one. So with that, let's just jump right in and start with larger schools, Class AA. And let's talk about the 5 finalists that we have for midseason Player of the Year right there. And we'll start in Sioux Falls. University of Louisville verbal commit, Sydney Shetman, senior outside for the Warriors.
Yeah, Shetman does a really good job with a really powerful arm swing on the outside this season. She's been moved around a little bit between pin to pin, but again, just such a strong player. She stands at like 6'4", huge presence at the net for the Warriors, really plays both sides of the ball.
Right, Sydney's somebody who's been on the state scene for about 3 years now, battled injuries, finally healthy, probably has the ability, as much as anybody maybe in the class, to the ability to take over a match with her offensive ability and really can pose a lot of problems at the net defensively as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and so our next finalist in Class AA comes from Huron, and a setter for the Tigers, Tenley Budenhagen.
Yeah, and Budenhagen, we talk about her so much, just really embracing that role, that Shelley tries to teach to the Huron Tigers, just embracing every part of the game and being an all-around player. Obviously as a setter, she runs the offense, but her defense is just so solid. That's kind of where she got her start playing as a DS a couple years back. But again, just such a great leader for this team. And like I said, you cannot speak enough about her overall, well-rounded player.
Right. And I think, we've touched on it, but underrated as a setter. Yes, she's underrated. Or yes, she has defensive skills all around, but her knowledge of the game, her court vision, and just her overall setting skills really underrated. They've done it for 2 years and been one of the top setters in the state for the past 2 years, and has only gotten better this year, with a new lineup around her. So definitely a quality player who probably of anybody that we're going to talk about in Class AA probably doesn't get quite as much attention as maybe she deserves. So Tenley Budenhagen, senior setter for Huron. Next, moving up north, we will talk about Brooklyn Kusler, outside hitter, Aberdeen Central.
Yes, and Kusler's one of those names that we have kind of talked about in years past. I know she was up there in our finalists even last year, but such an athletic player, and she's done our top testing a few times, just always one of the most standouts when it comes to vertical reach, even speed. That kind of part of her game is just so impressive, and she's definitely a go-to this year for Aberdeen Central, who's kind of come on hot towards the end of the year.
Right, and probably their emotional, their communication leader, and definitely a go-to in a Southwest State University verbal commit for Kusler. So she's been again on the AA scene with this group for the last 3 or 4 years for Aberdeen Central, and statistically having one of the top years of anybody in the state for Brooklyn Kusler. And with that, our final 2, let's move back to Sioux Falls. And the first, sophomore, Bergen Riley, setter/pin hitter for Sioux Falls O'Gorman.
Yes, and I think it's no secret here that Bergen Riley is one of the most talented volleyball players in the state right now, moving to kind of a different role for her this year. We know she's one of even the nation's top setters in her class, but is doing a really, really good job attacking the ball for O'Gorman this year with over 5 kills per set, which is unheard of in any stat book. But for a team who, everyone knows how offensively dominant O'Gorman is. And so she plays a huge role in that. And again, kind of a new role for her as well. So very impressive to see her versatility as such a young player.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We talked about flexibility, just all around talent for her as a volleyball player. The person we're going to talk about next is probably maybe more the emotional, the vocal leader, but skill-wise, Bergen Riley, again, one of the top recruits in the country and one of the top players in Class AA. Reagan Riley from Sioux Falls, O'Gorman, setter, senior, verbal commit to North Dakota State University.
Yes, so as we kind of talked about with Bergen earlier, Reagan has taken over a 5-1 setting position for the O'Gorman Knights this year and has just done a really good job. Like I said earlier, their offense is just almost untouchable. They have a really solid defense too, which gives them the ability to be untouchable offensively, but she just does a great job of moving the ball around, putting her hitters in good positions. She just has so many options all the time, and that really speaks to her setting ability. And like you said earlier, such an emotional leader for this team as well.
Right, and I think, Coach talked about earlier when she talked about her as a leader, and they kind of follow her mentality, but I loved one of the greatest compliments was she said ability to include and uplift everybody on her team, right? She makes everybody else around her better, and when you are the leader on arguably the best team in the state, right? You're going to be up for Player of the Year, and not to mention her volleyball talent, but I think we've been just as impressed with what kind of a leader that she's been for Sioux Falls O'Gorman. Would that be correct?
Yes, definitely. And I think we forgot to mention too, she's heading up north in Fargo next year to play volleyball for North Dakota State. So it'll be interesting actually to see what kind of role she plays on that team, whether they throw her right in as a setter, but she also has the ability to attack too.
Yeah, and so all talented players at the state's largest level, and tough decisions. We battle it out weekly almost here in the office on which one we think was still completely undecided, and that's the way it should be as talent. One thing we touch on in South Dakota volleyball is there isn't just one clear-cut best player. The talent level at all of these classes goes up, and there's more talented young ladies every single year. It seems like this decision gets harder and harder every year. But with that, let's move on. And of course, you either go B A double A or double A A B. So with that, we're going to go to Class B. They're always kind of stuck in the middle. Or Class A, they're always kind of stuck in the middle. But our Class A Adrenaline Volleyball mid-season Player of the Year finalists. Okay, and the first one, surprisingly, it's the first time in a long time, we're going to talk a little bit more about the other side of the river. The first one, Rapid City Christian, senior setter Riley Freeland.
Yes, and we've gotten to know this Rapid City Christian team so well throughout the summer and then even this season, talking to Coach the other week. But Riley Freeland is one of those girls that just really has control of her team, I would like to say. Such a solid leader, and she sets expectations for that team on and off the court. They're all on the same page, and obviously a great setter too, as their offense is really taking over the West River this season.
Well, and I think you talk about, right, we're talking about attitude and leadership, and those things are important, but we forget she's a 6'1" setter, so that gives her advantages and the ability to do some things defensively as well as offensively. This year, a lot more healthy than she was a year ago. Her accuracy and her consistency are also something has kind of set her apart as what we kind of think of right now as maybe the most consistent match-in, match-out setter in Class A. So that's Riley Freeland. While we're out in the beautiful Black Hills, let's stay in the Black Hills. And our next finalist for mid-season Player of the Year is Haley Wathen, 5'8" outside hitter, senior from Hill City. This week, just cracking the rankings in the Sports Writers poll, Hill City Rangers and Haley Wathen.
Yeah, so what's interesting about Haley Wathen too and Riley Freeland is that they are matched up a lot, and we've seen kind of the head-to-head matchup between Hill City and Rapid City Christian as just two solid West River teams, and I've been so impressed watching Haley Wathen. Even this summer, to this fall, just the consistency in her arm swing, the power that she has, and just the ability to score wherever she is on the court, definitely a go-to for the Hill City Rangers.
Right, and one thing we had noticed from last year to this year, her senior leadership has really held true, especially in that second Rapid City Christian match last week that they won. And they're going to get a test. So Haley and her teammates heading out ranked for the first time probably in quite a while, heading to Northwestern this weekend, where they will match up with Rapid City Christian again, but also get a matchup with number 1 ranked Northwestern. So really going to be interesting to see how she matches up with some other top players in the state who we'll talk about in just a little bit. But yeah, great team and great program that Hill City and I think Rapid City Christian, both of them are building. Volleyball is getting so much better in the Black Hills, and these two are a testament. Athletes who can step in and play on pretty much any team in Class A, if not most teams in the state. So moving on from there. A kid that we got to see at the state tournament last year, loved her, carried that play through the summer at our events, and then this fall went healthy. Taylor Wilshire, Dakota Valley libero, senior libero for the Panthers.
Yes, and it's no secret that Dakota Valley has one of the top defenses in the state at this point. Their defensive intensity is just crazy. They've stopped multiple AA teams this year, and I think with Taylor Wilshire, defensively, they're the best team in the state, and just the consistency that Wilshire has, both in serve receive, which is huge and a lot of times missed. When you're talking about overall good players, serve receive is a really common weakness. But Wilshire has such, like I said, consistency, both serve receive and defense wise. And she really anchors that team.
Right, she's in the lineup, just like calming presence, I think, of everybody else. And they just know balls are not going to hit the floor, so it just makes such a difference with her communication. And maybe not the biggest, loudest, right, rah-rah, little leader, but a great communicator and, as solid of the liberos we've seen, in the entire state. Just loved her. And the great thing about that, I would say, I think you touched on consistency, and we've seen that. We watched her at the state tournament last year as a junior. First time opened our eyes. This summer, we saw exactly the same high level of play, and every time we've watched her in a match this year, there just hasn't been any drop-off in her game. Right? Moving on, another DAC-12 will just stay in the conference. Another DAC-12 rival of Wilshire's, a kid that we've talked about so much over the past couple years. Finally, a senior, 5'9" outside hitter, Abby Glanzer, Sioux Falls Christian.
Yes, and an outside hitter that can do it all. She hits from that, obviously the pin, and then she also comes in for a deadly 3-ball, we like to call her gap, and even a 2 in the middle of the court. They really have her moving around this year. And just a heavy swing, but also a smart player at the same time. She knows when she should swing to score and when she should swing, to keep the ball alive. And the thing about Abby is that just the growth in her game these past couple of years has been incredible. And, Sioux Falls Christian being 20-0, they have some great players, but I think she is definitely one that sticks out with her leadership. And again, her talent as well.
Right, and kind of, maybe more so even last year as a junior, where she was a lot of the players that are playing now, basically their entire team returned, but last year really showed that being one of the few members last year that was coming back with any varsity or much varsity experience. Really showed that leadership. This year, maybe passing the baton a little bit amongst some of her senior teammates and sharing that, but looked at vocal leader, inspirational leader, always kind of that other coach on the court. And I thought we saw it a lot last year. It would be interesting to see what happens down the stretch, but when Sioux Falls Christian needed big points, more often than not, it looked like they were going Glanzer's way. And the kid that it's kind of hard to believe she's a senior now. So talented player. But hey, and the final one, let's stay in this conference. As good of a volleyball conference as there is in the state of South Dakota, the DAC-12. This is a kid, what a great kid. We talked about, first of all, extremely gifted skill-wise, but Abby Brooks, middle blocker, what do we say, 6'2" middle blocker from Madison.
Yes, and like you said, a long 6'2". It's almost hard to believe she's only 6'2", just how long she is, and just the technical ability. You know, when Madison can get in system and get her the ball, I think she pretty much scores at will. Her offensive ability has really grown from last year to this year, and this summer to this fall has been incredible. And she plays both sides of the ball as well. You know, as a 6'2" long blocker, she stops the ball a lot for her defense, and is able to keep her team in a lot of games and really win, a lot of games. Madison's doing really well this year.
Yeah, and Abby's just kind of that quiet, positive, that just every single year you just watched her skills develop and improve. But I think you hit it on the head. It's so difficult sometimes to set a middle, much easier to set an outside, on the pins. But I think you hit it on the head. When she gets set, there aren't many teams in the state that can stop her. That's the point for Madison, and she's one of the main reasons they've had the success. Number 2 in the DAC-12 heading into this weekend's challenge. So that's Class A. 5 great candidates there as well. And with that, we know that now we move to Class B. And with the Class B, we have 5 finalists as well. The kind of the leaders who talked about Northwestern as far as the team race. And then a whole pack chasing them, and then that's reflected in our Player of the Year nominees. First, Brecken Ewald, 5'11" outside from Chester area.
Yeah, and Brecken really plays such a big offensive role for Chester, who's really coming on hot. They've had a couple big wins the last couple weeks. But like I said, just an offensive staple for the Lady Flyers. Can move the ball around. And can also play, defense at the net too, putting up a strong block to help slow down some of those opponents. So I think she'll be really big for the Flyers to go to in the postseason.
Right, and probably another one that maybe stat-wise isn't as big because she has other weapons, Chester, to go with her. But one thing, just that positive all-around leaders, we've talked about how they've shuffled their lineup and really welcoming some of the younger athletes that have jumped in. But a huge go-to offensive weapon, defensive skills emerging, and has played on the big stage, for Chester area last couple of years. And they're as hot as anybody, knocking off winner last week, and she had a huge match against a Class A ranked winner a week ago. So, a member of a great team, but the one that we look at anyways as, right now the biggest standout star. So next, and we're going to get this right, Chesney Olivier from Ipswich, 5'5", senior libero.
Yes, and Ipswich, you talk about Chester being hot. Ipswich has kind of had such a breakout season this year, and a huge part of it is their defensive intensity. And this girl really leads the way in their defensive intensity, and almost 2,000 career digs, as a senior. She's been a part of the program for a while. She has expectations, and I think she's really doing an awesome job of leading this team and having a really good year.
Well, and I think Chesney, we talked about that senior class, right? And how do you pick one? The defensive leader of this group, and again, a team we've talked about probably just been overshadowed because of geography and because of other teams they play. They just happen to have, the 2 best programs in the state in their conference. But they're having a big breakout year, and their defense is such a big part of it. Chesney's been around for a long time, and this is just one of those kids you need to watch, and a team that people need to watch if they haven't had a chance to yet. staying up in the northeast part of the state, which is where we'll stay for the rest of these preseason finalists, nominees. But a name that's been on the state stage for about 3 years now, senior outside hitter from Fulton area, Peyton Millius.
Yes, I think you hit it on the head there. She is one of the most experienced players, maybe other than a few of the athletes we have coming up here, but again, has been in those big matches. She was a state runner-up last year and played a huge role for Fulton in their state championship run. So again, just such kind of a diverse outside who, she doesn't swing hard at every ball, but when she does, she scores, and has really been focusing on her defense here since last season. And we can really tell, that she's picked up that part of her game to make her a more well-rounded player.
Right. And one thing, just to interject, before you comment, state runner-up championship run last year for Fulton, knocked off by Northwestern. Mm-hmm. But they made the state championship game for the first time, and Peyton was a huge part of that. Somebody that we look to, and we've talked about it for a couple of years now, where there would be someone, if Fulton's going to make a run, she has that ability to take over a match, and probably when they play well, or the matches that she really gets determined and takes over. But Peyton's been on that state scene, now for 3 years, and finally a senior playing up that high level of competition up in the northeast area. So staying up there, just about 40 miles away. From Peyton is freshman setter from Warner, Ava Nielsen.
Yes, it's hard to believe she's just a freshman because the maturity that, Ava plays with is just incredible. As a setter, she kind of takes charge of the offense. But, we talked earlier, her defense is what really makes the difference for this Warner team. Their defense is what keeps them alive and keeps them in matches, and I think she totally encompasses that. And then, obviously on the other end of the court, she has great technical skill as a setter. And, is continuing to improve her leadership skills. And I think, talk about players to watch in the years to come. I think Ava's going to be at the top of everyone's list.
Right. And you're talented when you make All-State as an 8th grader. It just doesn't happen very often. But, as talented, skill-wise of a setter, even with the Rileys at AA, Nielsen just has an extreme amount of talent from the setting position. That all-around game is there. And, again, we're talking about somebody who is in 9th grade, but definitely the leader of the Monarchs, and someone who has been on the scene and will continue to be on the scene for years to come. With that, let's talk about rivalries. Let's move into our final two nominees for midseason Player of the Year, and from Northwestern, outside hitter Sydney Shell.
Yep, and in her senior season, I talked about experience earlier. I think Sydney Shell is probably one of the most experienced players, not only at the Class B level, but honestly in the whole state. She's played a huge part on that Northwestern team for years. They've played in countless big matches. She was really a go-to last year in that state championship win. She has 20-plus kills in I don't know how many matches this season. Just really a player that can be so dominant so often at the Class B level. It just really, like I said, an incredible athlete overall. And in her senior season, really sharing that leadership role.
Yeah, and such a kid. I still remember last year as a junior, they're trailing, right? And they're trailing rival Warner in the semifinals. And she got a set and hammered home a kill and was like, let's go. And when she raised her voice, all of a sudden the intensity of that entire team ramped up about 3 notches, and they were unstoppable there through. She is the offensive go-to weapon, probably as difficult to stop an offensive weapon. We talk about somebody who can take over a game. Sydney not only can, but does often and has on the biggest stage. So she's already proven it. Not maybe their most vocal leader. I think we're going to talk about her in a second, but such a talented offensive player all around and has been in their lineup. Like you said, the state championship run last year, the run this year, they haven't skipped a beat, and Sydney's such a huge part of that. With that, our last Senior Year finalist, and we've talked about her a lot because, for us anyway, she came out of nowhere. I know she played all the way around last year for Northwestern, but 5'11". I guess they have her listed as a setter. We'll talk about that more in a second, but Hannah Schenzel.
Yes, last but certainly not least, I think, is Hannah. And we kind of talked earlier, such a dual player and a polymath. We actually added a new word to our dictionary today, so thank you, Hannah, for that one. But almost like a jack of all trades for Northwestern. She spends half of her rotation setting and the other half attacking. So, Northwestern just has such faith in her doing both. She's stepped up. She was huge in that Pentagon tournament earlier in the season, was really a go-to in their win over Dakota Valley offensively. And then obviously, like I said, just does a really good job setting the ball, with one of her hitters being another Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah, and so we were literally sitting and talking like, okay, what the heck? We have to come up with a term for her because her stats probably suffer both ways because she does so much of everything, right? Mm-hmm. She isn't only an attacker. She doesn't just set. She's not only getting digs, right? Not only playing that. She literally does something of everything. We looked it up, and they said a polymath is literally someone talented in all areas of given science, and I believe they used Leonardo da Vinci. So Hannah, maybe that's high praise, but that's kind of what she does, right? And she does everything on a volleyball court and does it very, very well, and I would say is probably the vocal leader for Northwestern. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely the vocal leader, and we've seen it in multiple games this year. Just such a calm team in the face of adversity, a team that's been there, and she's just as experienced as anyone else on that team, has been a part of those big matches. And I think she does a really good job of bringing her team in and keeping them competitive during those tight sets.
Yeah, and it doesn't look smile on her face, but yet is intense and has led them to a great season. But again, doesn't do just one thing. Where some of these other athletes, even though we've talked about on this list, are maybe strong in one area, not as strong in the other. Hannah's very, very skilled in others, and just came again for us. Came out of nowhere, right? Us not doing our homework, and all of a sudden we saw her at SummerSlam, and we just kept saying, "Who is this?" Right? Who is this kid? And we knew her from last year, but then seeing her just take that huge step, she deserves to be here as all these guys do. So, again, Class B, another one that we fight, argue, I should say, regularly in the office. We're going to have to go to the Electoral College, I guess, to see who wins as Class B Player of the Year. But a couple things that, Haley, before we wrap up with everybody, the last month, what does a Player of the Year type person do down the stretch and in postseason?
Yeah, I think as a Player of the Year, finalist or candidate, what we're looking for is really, and I think we talked about it for a lot of these girls, stepping up in those big moments and embracing that pressure. And, I think the saying goes, big players make big plays. I think that's one of my most favorite things to see on the volleyball court is just, that go-to player gets that big set and she gets that big kill.
Right, and they want, right, the moment is not too big for them, right?
Yeah.
They want to step up, they want the ball, and also how can they lead, right?
Yeah.
What are they the one that's willing to pull their teammate up, because nobody will play perfect every single match, and a Player of the Year has to be somebody that teammates can count on and can lead in a positive way, along with being one of the most skilled and talented volleyball players on the court. So things that we look for, all these guys have an opportunity. It's going to be fun. I think especially, point anybody out in all classes, it's going to be fun watching. And again, with anything, there are probably 5 to 7 names that we could have put in here too. And down the stretch, that's where big time players step up, and there might be names that aren't even on this list that step up and get their chance to shine come postseason. So anything you want to add before we close?
I don't think so. Just, yeah, like we said, just so exciting to see these girls continue to push hard. And even such a crazy year like this, I think you can just tell how much everyone loves the game. And that's just making this season that much more special.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be fun to watch these guys, and everybody stay safe. Everybody wear your mask, get your rest, right? Everybody stay healthy because, as you can tell, we cannot wait for that calendar to flip. November to get here and tournament time to come. So we'll have more on Patreon. We thank you, everybody, for subscribing. Get online, watch these talented athletes, plus so many, many more. If you're missing out on South Dakota volleyball, you're really missing out on some talented kids. So we say thank you. Check out a game, learn about somebody new, follow a new team, and just thank you for supporting us. So with that, we'll let you go. Until next time.